Okay, so it's 11:04. I think we can go ahead and get started. Um, Before we start, we just wanted to take a moment to wish Representative Liz Miranda a good recovery. As many of you might have heard, she and several family members have COVID-19. So please join me in wishing her to take care and sending her our deep appreciation that she's done for all the work that she's done as a co-sponsor of the Safe Communities Act as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. One more reminder that if you have Twitter, please live tweet, take some screenshots. We're using the hashtag Immigrants Day MA. We've gotten to 350 participants, which is great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our speaking program now. So our first speaker is Ava Malona, President and CEO of Maura Coalition. She is going to welcome you and share some of the work that we've been doing, along with our advocacy priorities for today. So Ava, I am passing it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Amira and the amazing Maura staff. Welcome everyone to the 24th annual Immigrants Day and the first virtual one. Thank you so much for joining us today. It fills me with pride and deep gratitude and joy to have hundreds of advocates from across the state, from Western Mass to Metro West to North Shore to South Coast, and a live audience on Facebook. Welcome. We have an incredible coalition. You saw the slides a few minutes ago. These are our members in the front lines, distributing masks, food and basic supplies, caring for the sick, helping students learn from a distance, guiding people through enormously complex systems, and raising and distributing money by the millions for the vulnerable families. You are the true heroes. We are so thrilled to have so many legislators with us today. Thank you, including our hosts, Representative Marjorie Decker and Senator Dominico, two outstanding voices for immigrants and social justice in Beacon Hill. And of course, our amazing Attorney General, Maura Healey. As you may remember, last year we had a blizzard on Immigrants Day. The city of Boston was closed, but we still made it and had a fantastic event. And this year we have to go digital, but we are going to make the most of this opportunity because our advocacy today is urgently needed. 1 in 5 workers in Massachusetts is an immigrant. There is the share is even greater among essential workers, including some of the riskiest jobs, from cleaning to nursing to caring for the elders. While many of us are safely working from home, they have to take the T every day, work with often inadequate protection, and they go home to small apartments where they can't social distance. Not surprisingly, they are getting sick by the thousands. The state, race, and ethnicity data are incomplete, but we know that 1/4 of the COVID-19 cases for which we have data are Latinos and 15% are Black, twice their share of the population. You'll hear today from Gladys Vega to the Chelsea Collaborative in the top of hotspot. But remember, we are also seeing immigrants of color getting sick at high rates in Brockton, Lawrence, Everett, Lynn, Revere, Randolph. And many people who feel sick cannot get tested. And many don't know they can access care, even if they are undocumented or uninsured. We simply haven't seen the public health outreach that we need in multiple languages, meeting people where they are, and making the most of the bilingual, bicultural health professionals we have available. These have been some of the MIRA's top priorities in our advocacy with the administration and with the legislature. Immigrants have also suffered disproportionately from job losses and business closure. You know, you need the Social Security number to get unemployment. So many displaced workers do not qualify. If they pay taxes using a tax identification number, they also didn't get the federal stimulus payments, nor did the US citizen spouses or children. And because of the highly publicized public charge, many immigrants who qualify for benefits are being terrified no matter how much we reassure them to apply and to access services, because the fear is so persuasive. Most of this is due to the federal policies, but our Commonwealth can and must step up to address these injustices. Right now, the only safety net for immigrants and immigrant families is food banks, funds that the philanthropy put up, the private fund that the governor and the first lady put together, that we successfully advocated to ensure that the private funds are inclusive and reach most of our vulnerable population. We are extremely grateful for what we have right now, but it's not enough. The need, it's enormous. We need state funds to help ensure that our nonprofits will be able to keep families for many more weeks. We need to dramatically increase funding for housing assistance up to 50 million, and we need to target stimulus payment for taxpayers who use tax identification number. And we need to strengthen our sick leave laws to meet the demands of this pandemic. We also need to preserve the structures of our community-based organization and refugee resettlement that are hurting very much right now. This is what a fair, equitable, and inclusive COVID-19 response would look like. This is how our legislature can say, we see you, our immigrant constituents. We recognize your huge role you play in our economy. And we know that if we want a successful recovery, we have to do this together, taking care of every member of our community. I also want to urge you to keep fighting for the Safe Community Act and the driver's license legislation. Both are more urgent than ever to ensure that immigrants can stay safe and meet their families' basic needs. And we need to keep investing in immigrant programs for immigrant integration so we can all recover from this crisis. To our members, thank you for the incredible work that you do. To all our advocates who are joining us today, thank you for adding your voice to these very important campaigns. To the legislators who support us, keep up the good fight. To the amazing MIRA staff, I am privileged to work with all of you every day. Together, we can overcome this crisis. We can emerge stronger, more united, and more resilient. Thank you so very much. And at this moment, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to you one of the best advocates for immigrants that I know, people's lawyer, Attorney General Maura Healey.
Okay, well, good morning, Ava. Good morning, everybody who's on today. I want to thank MIRA and MIRA's team for bringing us together. I want to thank Representative Decker for hosting and my Senator Sal Dominico. Both of them are such tremendous advocates for all of us, and especially for our immigrant community. It's really, really heartening to see so many people on the line. I was scrolling through just to see how many folks were on, and also, so happy to see faces and names. Because even in this time of social distancing, I think it's been really great how we've found a way to stay connected. And this is going to be the way things are for a bit. So I'm glad everybody is adapting. This is a really, really special Immigrants Day. And I want to use today to celebrate all that I think everybody here knows that immigrants have meant to this country, meant to our society, that I think some are now just beginning to see a little bit more clearly. And it is my hope that through this terrible crisis and pandemic, that more people will take up and extol immigrants and all that they bring to our society, our community, our economy. Eva's so right. I think about who has really been on the front lines during this crisis, whether it's people stocking groceries or working as cashiers, people driving trucks, loading the docks. Think about all the PCAs that are out there. So many folks who are cleaning and cooking in our hospitals right now. I think about people throughout the system, and the people driving our buses and our trains, cleaning, disproportionately immigrants. And we would not be able to do anything were it not for the heroism of these folks who truly are at greater risk, because we know that racial and ethnic health disparities are all too real based on systemic racism, structural racism in society. And we also know that these are the people who are literally out there subject to more exposure and way more at risk. And it's incredibly sad when you look at the numbers. The highest number of deaths, the highest number of infections right now, we know are in places like Chelsea, Everett, Lynn, Revere, Brockton, Stoughton, Lawrence, Lowell. This doesn't surprise us on this call. Springfield, Worcester, I could go on. But I hope it does serve as an awakening to more people across the Commonwealth about the need to use this time as an opportunity to truly build from here a more just and equal, equitable society. And I say that across all fronts. Some of us are working hard to support vote by mail right now, to expand voting and ways for people to access the ballot. There's great talk about the need to further support access to healthcare and deliver healthcare. I think about right now our advocacy as an office around small businesses, recognizing that minority-owned businesses and small businesses, the businesses that truly have provided the backbone to neighborhoods and communities, so often run by immigrant families, are not getting the stimulus money from the federal government. And yesterday I sent a letter that I got many other AGs around the country to join, advocating that Congress earmark especially funding for those causes. Through this time, I am grateful to have the support and collaboration with so many of you, our partners in the legislature and champions there, but the wonderful coalitions and organizations, MIRA, of course, but many, many others of you. Over the last 5 years now, we've convened regularly, my New Americans Council, and I've seen the importance of this council and people's participation so close. It first started, of course, with the travel ban and needing to bring together voices around that. But in this time of the pandemic, it's been really important. So I want to thank you. In particular, folks, I wanted you to know a few things. Number one, we're very focused on the issue of worker safety right now. We've received calls from farm workers in Western Mass that did not have PPE. By contacting our office, we were able to get them PPE. We also got calls from workers at places like Amazon, distribution centers, Whole Foods, Stop and Shop. You call our Fair Labor Division about those issues, and we will take action. We've gotten action, immediate action when you call. So please continue to identify those things. The other thing we did, and again, with the assistance of some of you, is we prepared 2 flyers that went out last week. Important messaging for immigrant communities. One flyer was to say, look, in this time, Nobody can evict you. No landlord can threaten you. There are no foreclosures. There's no debt collection. And here are numbers to call for worker safety issues. So I want to thank Mira for its help in distributing this. We were able to translate that flyer into 10 different languages and get it out electronically, but also for distribution at food pantries and other sites. I had the pleasure this weekend of being Saturday morning with Marconi. Of course, everyone of you knows Marconi Almeida Barros, who is chief of our community engagement division, along with the fabulous Gladys Vega in Chelsea, as we handed out flyers and diapers and other things. And it was great to be able to talk to people on the spot who said, hey, I just got threatened with eviction. And we were able to say, no, that's not going to happen. Call our office, we'll stop it. The next day I happened to go over to Everett to the Grace Food Pantry. And again, we were handing out more of the flyers. I just want to say that in these moments, both days, I was so struck by the resilience of our immigrant community, by their calm and the stoicism. These are people who are, we know, hardest hit by this, and yet demonstrate, as they waited patiently in lines that stretched block after block for food and supplies, with such patience and grace and good humor. And we are not doing enough. We need to do more. The federal government, we know, is not going to be there for us. We need to do everything we can on the state level and on the local level. The good news is I've seen our hospitals step up. There are now mobile testing sites in places like Chelsea, in Boston. South Coast Hospital right now, the last 3 days, has been down on the fishing piers in New Bedford because we know that workers there have been affected. And so there's good collaboration there. That needs to continue. We need to find ways to support all the economic injustice, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and the like. And we need to continue to stand strong against the threats of continued marginalization by the Trump administration. And we will continue to stand by our immigrant community in court and out of court with all of you, making clear that in Massachusetts, we lift up the voices of immigrant communities. We know that it is immigrants who have truly made this country what it is today, and that will forever be the case, no matter what they say out of Washington. So I thank you all for your partnership, and I look forward to standing strong with all of you. God bless our immigrant workers. God bless our immigrant families. And I know that all of us will continue to do everything we can for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Healey. Immigrants and refugees really need a strong advocate now more than ever, and we so appreciate the work that your office is doing in making sure people know their rights and reaching communities where they live in a language that they understand. So with that, Suzanne is going to share our screen with our first advocacy moment here. Oh, sorry. A quick note on language interpretation. We had some technical difficulties, but it is up and running again. You can click the globe icon in the bottom of your screen. You can select Spanish, Portuguese, or Haitian Creole. As the slide says, if you need Haitian Creole, please select French, and you will be hearing Haitian Creole. Okay, Suzanne, next slide. So with that, going off of all of the amazing work that Attorney General Maura Healey's office is doing, we have a quick Twitter advocacy moment for you all. So as we know, 9.2% of Massachusetts residents don't speak English well, and that's almost 600,000 people. So as you can see on this slide, our immigrant population is so diverse that we need multiple languages to meet community needs. So use the link that you see on your screen right now, bit.ly/IDSH2020 to tweet that slide and a call to action to your state officials. And someone hopefully can drop that link in the chat too, so that once we move off of this screen, people can continue to tweet about the importance of language access right now. Thank you, Suzanne. So now moving along in our speaking program, I would like to introduce one of our legislative hosts today. one of the most passionate advocates for immigrants and for working class families on Beacon Hill. Please join me in welcoming Representative Marjorie Decker. You're still on mute, Rep. Decker. There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank Mira and all the staff at Mira for not only for bringing us together today, but for the work that you do in bringing us together 365 days a year to really make sure that the needs of immigrants are not forgotten, and more importantly, to make sure that immigrants are not invisible in our community. I want to say thank you to the Attorney General, Maura Healey. She really is, she always makes my heart feel bigger when I hear her talk. The work that she does is so much about really the people's work. I want to say a few things. I chair the Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. And so my job has been a lot of different things like many people, but it's really to make sure also I have this role of making sure that our behavioral health care systems, our mental health systems, for those who need, whether it's they need issues around addiction, recovery, we know that we're preparing for this mental health surge right now. And I say that, and the preparation for that is for many people are already experiencing a mental health crisis. And for many of our immigrant neighbors and family members, that crisis is happening while they're still considered essential workers. And so my job is to make sure that we ensure that immigrants also have access to care. So every question I ask in every part of my job, the lenses are always about how is this impacting immigrants in our communities, and which immigrants are able to actually access resources and who's being left out. So to let people know that we are doing that work, we worked with Commissioner McCullough at DMH, and we know that they've just hired 60 community engagement workers through a grant to work in the greater Boston area to do community engagement in multiple languages, to make sure that they are really meeting people in the language that is accessible to them and talking about the kind of resources that are available, and more importantly, to find out what they need in order to be able to keep safe and keep their families safe. That it's great that we have this grant, but we need to do this beyond Boston. This cannot just be if you are fortunate enough and by luck or happenstance to live in Boston or greater Boston. We're working to see whether or not we need a legislative approach to also expanding the number of visits that immigrant children are currently allowed to have in accessing behavioral health care and mental health support. So we will continue pushing that, and we're working with the administration on that, I will say. I will also say that this idea of essential is such a curious thought, because many of you, and myself included, we've always seen the jobs of who cleans our hospitals, who takes care of our most frail and our elderly as essential. I think one of the many tasks that we have is to make sure that while I think a few things have happened. For many people, the curtain has been pulled back and they see that the safety net actually isn't as strong as they would have liked to have thought it was. I think many of us on this call, and certainly Mira, and certainly my high school classmate and friend and colleague Sal, Senator Dominico, we know that that safety net has never really been strong, and that's what our life's work has been about. But I would say that for immigrants right now, what people are seeing is they're seeing the essential role that they play in making sure people are getting their groceries delivered, that the factories are actually continuing to process food, that people who need care in their homes are getting home health aides. What they're not seeing, and this is where I think this is our work together, is they're not seeing the suffering that also immigrants are experiencing. So for the first time, many people are maybe recognizing the essential role that immigrants are playing. But two things, I don't think that we, in our world of Zoom, for those of us who spend our days in Zoom, there's a whole world of people who are not on Zoom and whose pain and suffering is happening in the privacy of their homes and their families. And while that has been true for many immigrants and people living in poverty, it has become even more true, and it becomes more of our mandate to make sure that we don't allow that to happen. We must witness the suffering and the pain that comes with immigrants who are now seen, many as essential workers, and our response as a community, as a government, as a people, must be proportionate to both the essential role of their work and to the suffering. And I will say, we are not doing that. We are not meeting the response with the urgency nor the essential role that immigrants are playing. Can we imagine if many of the immigrants in our communities continue to get sick, continue unable to work, or just decide to stop working, which is not an option for many, I think we would more quickly see an essential response. Because if people do not feel safe staying home, if they do not feel safe acknowledging that they are sick or seeking health care, then they cannot continue to care for themselves. They cannot continue to care for their families. And for people who don't think we need a larger response that is based out of humanitarian response, well, then there's the public health crisis. We now know what many of us have always believed: our well-being is absolutely tied to the well-being of every single person living in our community, regardless of their citizenship, regardless of their status, and regardless of the zip code that they live in. And so I am working with many advocates across the state to make sure that where we can pull levers right now to open up additional resources, we are doing that. But I know that there's a lot more work that both Senators Dominico and I, Mira, and a number of other advocates are talking about every day. What is going to be the larger response from government and from the private sector? There is a dual responsibility there that we have not seen or recognized. I want to say to those who are out there doing this work, I want to say thank you. And I also want to recognize that my thank you and my gratitude is no substitute for actions. And so I call on all of us to really dig in deep, to continue working together, and to continue showing both the essential nature of immigrants in our communities, but also to find innovative ways to make sure that we are forced to bear witness of that suffering. And that while many of us continue to press on a humanitarian response to this, we also call to task the public health approach that is mandated. If we are going to ever be able to slow the spread, contain the spread, immunize when that's a possibility, we will only do this if we do both as a humanitarian, a human rights response, and a public health response. And I am convinced that the many of you who are on this Zoom call, and the many of our community members who can't be on this Zoom call, we're gonna do it. We have no choice. I'm committed to doing this with you. And I wanna remind people in Massachusetts as well, because I live in Cambridge and I represent Cambridge, there's a lot of companies working in Cambridge right now that are working on both a vaccine, that are working on testing, that are working on antibody testing. More than 50% of the people who work in these companies and who work in the research and development are immigrants. So immigrants are playing essential roles all around us, allowing us to survive and get through this moment, both in terms of our just basic human needs of food and healthcare. They are also on the forefront of leading the research and the medical work and the scientific work that is going to help all of us actually safely someday come together in person. And so I won't say much more, but I just want to say that I can't thank you enough for pulling us together. There's so much more to do, but if ever the work that you have been doing, if it has ever felt like it fell on hollowed ears, now is our moment and it's our opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity, and this is our opportunity to actually show what we already know. Immigrants are an essential part of our communities. They fill our families. And the response and the recognition needs to be proportionate to the work and the roles that they are playing. And I'm committed to us doing that together. So I just say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you are doing.
Thank you so much, Representative Decker. Our next speaker is Don Sama, Co-Executive Director of the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence. ATASC's client base is incredibly diverse, speaking over a dozen languages, and as you'll hear from her today, many of them are extremely vulnerable right now. So Dawn, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mira, for bringing us all together to uplift the issues facing immigrants and refugees and unify us as change agents. Massachusetts is one of the top 10 states with the largest limited English proficient or LEP population, 40% of which are Spanish speaking and 24% speak an Asian language. In 2018, Boston Public Schools reported 74 different languages spoken at home, 32 of which were Asian languages. Most information available to residents is in English and therefore unavailable to LEP speakers. They rely heavily on multilingual providers to bridge access to critical information and services. ATASK is one of those organizations. ATASK is a statewide nonprofit organization that has been serving Asian victims of violence in Massachusetts for over 26 years. 95% of our clients require translation and/or interpretation, not just for domestic violence issues, but to access any services. Language-based marginalization existed before COVID-19 has only amplified under COVID-19, impacting the well-being, safety, and access to critical resources for LEP speakers and victims of violence. Despite the expected increase in domestic violence, we experience a decrease in calls and requests for services. Traditional avenues for safety, access to legal rights, and culturally specific and LEP services aren't available. We are seeing that victims are opting to stay with abusers even in high-risk situations because they feel they have no other viable options. Some have even returned to abusers, weighing the consequences of abuse versus consequences of contracting COVID-19 in shelters. Most will have few, if any, opportunities to reach our services because they're being monitored by abusers, and it's unlikely that they will reach out to law enforcement. At ATASK, we employ staff from over 10 different countries and territories, often immigrants and refugees themselves, who are fluent in 20 different Asian languages and dialects. The majority of their time is not spent on domestic violence related issues, but on translation and interpretation, such as translating English only documents and websites and interpreting over conference calls for English only providers. Multilingual staff are also trying to both learn and explain information about unemployment insurance, the moratorium on evictions, court notices, immigration issues, and COVID-19 updates that are predominantly in English, and then relay this information back to LEP clients. The invisible burden placed on multilingual providers is overwhelming. They take on this linguistic labor because of the scarcity of translated materials and multilingual services. This invisible work often goes unrecognized and is never remunerated. As our population increases and diversifies, systems, policies, and best practices need to follow suit. The nature of a crisis unveils our weaknesses, but also our strengths. COVID-19 has shown us both. Asian communities are facing a surge in racist attacks. LEP persons can't access resources, and the Black and Latinx communities have been disproportionately impacted by mortality and unemployment. Let's not forget these injustices, but there's also some great work happening. Although people are physically apart, and in many ways this crisis has brought people together, communities and institutions together to help problem solve and respond. We have built new relationships, assembled collaborations, and begun to think about how we can do better. I offer a few calls to action. One, it would be great if culturally specific organizations were explicitly listed on government websites. Victims from marginalized populations and communities are more comfortable calling an organization with staff they can identify with and communicate to. Secondly, the Safe Communities Act acts as a building block of trust between immigrant victims of sexual and violent crimes and law enforcement. For many victims who fear law enforcement, the Safe Communities Act would send a message to both victims and perpetrators that they can seek help without fear of deportation or detention, and would encourage early reporting by victims of violence. Lastly, the mission and operation of the Massachusetts Language Access Plan rests on the shoulders of a handful of multilingual providers and organizations who provide expert translation and/or interpretation on behalf of Massachusetts LEP residents. These very same multilingual providers have a degree of expertise and untapped cultural and linguistic expertise that can be integrated in the vetting, design, and implementation of inclusive policy and best practices. And as part of valuing this expertise, creating budgets and infrastructures that support the linguistic and cultural labor provided by these multilingual providers so that they are not just filling the gaps, but rather integrated into the fabric of our systems. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dom. I am so glad that we have 465 people on our call right now who have been able to hear your words and all of the words from our amazing panelists today. So next up, we have yet another action item for all of you people joining us today. I'm going to drop it in the chat here, and the bit.ly is also on the slide. So as Dawn mentions, there are two crucial bills that we've been advocating for this legislative session, and they are even more urgent right now: the Safe Communities Act and the Work and Family Mobility Act. So use the link on your screen to tweet in support of both of these bills. The link is bit.ly/IDSH capitals 2020 lowercase f, and it's also included in the chat. Our communities can't wait for basic protections or for driver's licenses that enable them to drive safely to meet their families' needs. So let's make sure our legislators know how urgent it is to get this legislation passed this session. Okay, Suzanne, you can stop the screen share and people can keep dropping that link in the chat so that we don't forget about it. And with that, we're moving through to introduce our second legislative host of the day, one of the strongest advocates for immigrants in the Massachusetts Senate, whose district has been hit especially hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. He's worked closely with the Chelsea Collaborative for years, and we're thrilled to have him with us here today. So please welcome Senator Sal DiDomenico.
Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. This is a special day always for me to participate with you folks and with Mira and Ava and so many other advocates who are pushing so hard for our immigrant population in our state and who stand up for them every single day and give them a voice. I am just proud to be part of the team that's at the State House with my colleagues and Representative Decker, my high school classmate, as she always says, and we were in high school together, and ironically, years later, we're working hand in hand, supporting issues that are near and dear to us, and comes from our upbringing in the city of Cambridge as well. A community that's always been welcoming to immigrants, and a community that's always been at the forefront of lifting people up. We're living in tough times right now. This is unprecedented times, obviously, what's going on around us. And my district in particular, as was mentioned, has been particularly hard. Chelsea, the #1 per capita community in the entire state. And it's actually, if you look at the numbers, only 2 boroughs in New York City have a higher infection rate per capita than Chelsea. So this is a national crisis in our own backyard in the city of Chelsea. And in the city of Everett, which is now #3 per capita in the entire state of Massachusetts for infection rates. So I have seen it, I am living it. We're in the middle of this pandemic. We understand how important it is to have a response that's not equal, because this is not affecting people equally. This is a targeted approach we need, because unfortunately we have seen and we know on this call numbers and are very, very different in different communities and different groups of people as well. And it is not a coincidence in my mind that the hardest hit communities are the areas that are high density, that have obstacles in terms of healthcare, large undocumented populations, and people who have to go to work every day, getting on buses and trains and putting themselves at risk so we can have the basic necessities that we have to live our lives. And it's really, I call it a national disgrace. It is a national disgrace that we are allowing our immigrants and putting people in these positions, because we all know for many, many years, we've been ignoring the things that could make a difference in their lives. Environmental justice communities, having our immigrants living in these communities where we have known for years they are not healthy. That is why, disproportionately, they have a higher rate of healthcare inequities. And it is important for us to understand that we can make that change over time, but we've been ignoring the facts for years. Safe communities. We have people in our communities who are afraid to get tested for fear of signing any kind of documents, for fear of showing up at a test site thinking that they are going to be taken into custody. Those are the challenges that we face every single day. And they're putting themselves and their families at risk, and the general public as a whole. So for people that don't think that affects them, it absolutely affects them. Because these are the individuals that are keeping our economy going when no one else wants to work. People want to sit at home with their families and feel safe. And I agree with that. But there are other people who have to go to work, who cannot have that luxury. And we have to support them, not just now, but later on when the economy comes back and things change. We cannot afford to forget who kept us running during this pandemic. and that is an immigrant population in a large part. So it's important for us to have these days. It's important for us to recognize them, but it's equally important to just not talk about it and actually put those words into action. I've talked to people all the time about supporting immigrant rights and supporting issues that are important to them, and they say all the right things. And then when it comes time to sign on to this legislation or to pass legislation, we kind of turn our back and we look the other way and look for someone else to stand up and do the work. And now it's our time to show leadership. It's our time to show people that we care and not just talk about how we care, but show how we care. And this is an important day for so many reasons, but the 400 plus of people on this call, we have a voice, and we have a large voice in this community. We have a large voice in this state. We have a large voice in this country to push back on the rhetoric coming from the top, all the way to the top in DC. We know what's happening. I don't want to go into all of that, but we know what's happening in this country. And we understand the rhetoric, and people are emboldened to speak and say things that they would normally say, but they are who they are. And now the truth is coming out. So we have to stand up to those folks and make sure we band together as a group and fight back and push back and show people that we are not going to get left behind, and we're going to fight for the people that we care about. And you know, I come from, as we know, people have heard the story. My grandfather came from Italy as a young boy and faced many of the challenges that our immigrants today face. Different nationalities, different names, different faces, but the same obstacles, the same challenges, and the same things that are in our way to make sure that we live a healthy and productive life, but not just for ourselves, but our families as well. So it's important. I want to thank Mira for your advocacy. I want to thank Gladys Vega, who's on here today as well, because Gladys Vega and the Chelsea Collaborative has been doing amazing work, not just during this pandemic, but you see leaders rise to the top in a crisis. And one of those leaders in our state, and I would put up with the top, is Gladys Vega, working very hard on the front lines, putting herself at risk every single day to feed individuals, to give them what they need to support their families, and just being in the front lines. And there's so many other people, but I want to mention Gladys Vega because she is one of the true heroes in our state who's standing up for immigrants today and doing an amazing job. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for all your work.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator Dominico, for sharing with us. We are a little bit behind on time. Our regional roundtables are supposed to start at right now, but we will get to them shortly. We'll just be a little bit delayed. So we have our final speaker now, the formidable Gladys Vega, Executive Director of the Chelsea Collaborative. Gladys is one of the most respected advocates for Latinx communities in Massachusetts, as the Senator mentioned, and in the COVID-19 crisis, she's become the face of immigrant communities' response to the pandemic, doing absolutely amazing work in the hotspot of Chelsea. So with that, I would like to pass it on to Gladys.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I have to apologize for my voice because I don't have a very good voice, as I've been sort of like exhausted of talking to everyone. I have to highlight that the panelists sort of like makes my heart melt because I know that I can heavily rely on them. And it's so refreshing to hear the voices of our elected official in terms of what needs to be done, not only today, but in the future. I would say that we've been hard at work. We've been sort of like providing a wellness check to our community members. We've been providing meals. We have a list of right now of 379 COVID-19 families that we visit with twice a week with boxes of food. We are last night on Tuesday we provided 3,200 meals in the line. We had a huge line. Our district attorney, our attorney general, Salt, everyone, every state rep that has reached out, every senator that has reached out to help Chelsea, I am extremely grateful. Our need is huge. The stories that we hear every day, this eviction situation where right now we're facing, people are being displaced, people are basically threatened, their savings are pretty much gone, so they don't have money anymore to buy food, and we're feeling it in the lines. They just pay the rent for those that were able to pay the rent. Many of them have stopped paying the rent since March. Our situation continues to be dire, but the situation of the COVID-19 highlighted things that were already happening in our immigrant community. These were pains of a city that was neglected, of a situation that continues to be ignored. The people that got affected or infected by the pandemic are those people that are taking the MBTA, are people that are the 80% of our service, of our residents are service providers, are service workers. The fact that we don't have a mobility act in place allow for these individuals to get the pandemic quicker, as they were taking public transportations, as they were not taking care of themselves to provide for others. And I really have to say that although I am grateful for what Governor Baker was able to do when we call for help, the bucket doesn't stop with the resources that he has brought. I ask for everyone in this webinar to please take care of our immigrant community. Make sure that those bills that we've been waiting for probably decades to pass, to make them a reality, for the people that every day have provided their 100% to make Massachusetts better. I would say that please do not forget us after this pandemic happens, because our situation is not going to be any better. People will not have jobs. It's not like May 18, we ring a bell and the business is open. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of people that we know that are not able to have a job because the business that was providing that job, that mom and pop business, is not going to be there. So we have to take care of our city. We have to take care of our resident, our immigrant community, but we also have to provide for organizations as MIRA, the Chelsea Collaborative, and many other ones in this chat that are facing every day the dilemmas of working in a poor immigrant communities. So I have to say I am grateful for Mara to come to Chelsea on Saturday and provide those brochures. Love the brochures. They were straight to the point, easy to understand. People were reading them. People are getting back to us with questions on those brochures. I really think that all I can ask to this panel is to please make sure that if there's anything that we should be giving back is the Safe Communities Act and the Mobility Act. For me, those are two things that are necessary once we begin. A lot of issues that I'm having in Chelsea is because of all the bad press around the public charge. People don't even want to go and get tested. And today we have 2,000, let me see my notes, 2,224 people that have COVID-19. Positive cases, 110 people have died. These are the numbers since yesterday. I bet you anything that those numbers probably are double in terms of the cases with COVID-19, because they're afraid of going to the doctor, because they're undocumented, because they don't have papers, because they're afraid of everything that the Trump administration has done wrong. So we have to, Massachusetts has to be better than that, and I believe that we can do it. So please, let's move forward these important bills, and let's show that Massachusetts really care and appreciates our immigrant community. Eva, un millón de gracias por todo lo que has hecho. Thank you so much for all your support, for the amazing work that you've been doing. I tell you that every time that we're in the lines, we're hearing stories that keep me up at night. I work 16 hours every day. When I leave home thinking, yesterday I left 7:30, I came here 6:30 in the morning, left at 7:30, and I'm like, yes, I'm home early. And then we get phone calls of donations, home calls of a person that is being evicted because he returned home with COVID-19, doesn't have a home. Those are the situations that we face. So please remember that many people are the voiceless, and we have to be their voice. So we have to stand strong and fight on their behalf, because Chelsea's having a real hard time. Gracias.
Wow, thank you so much, Gladys. I have no words, but thank you so much for being here and sharing that with us. And I am just truly so in awe of the work that you are doing at the Chelsea Collaborative. And I am so grateful that we have people like you in our movement. So deep breath. This concludes our speaking program. Thank you so much to all of our incredible panelists. And now it is your time to speak out, to tell your story, and to advocate for your communities. So with that, we are going to move into the regional roundtable discussions. So this is how it's going to work.